Look up, your redemption is near. But when? When are we to look up, now or later? Jesus said we're to look up because our redemption draws near or is close. But when exactly are we supposed to do that? Are we to be looking up at all times with our eyes scanning the sky while we're stumbling around and walking into things? Or is this a metaphorical statement? Or is there a specific time we are literally to watch the sky? Some look at this as proof that we are to watch for Jesus, not signs of his coming. Others think it is proof that we aren't to look for Jesus at all until right before he comes. That important distinction is what we're talking about today, and we're starting right now. We have recently done several videos on whether or not it is dangerous to believe that Jesus can return at any time. This is known as the theory of imminence. Needless to say, this has been a very controversial issue and has spawned numerous questions and debates. Now, this verse about looking up is one of the passages that was talked about in several online discussions. If Jesus is telling us to watch for his return by looking up, that means the date of his return is imminent, or it could happen at any time. Why else should we look up? Because we don't know when he's coming, right? Those who favor a pre-tribulation rapture point to this obvious fact and say, this supports our position. If Jesus' return can happen at any time, then they claim there can't be any signs before his return. That is why they say we are to metaphorically lift our heads and watch for Jesus' return at all times. Well, actually, shockingly, there can be prophetic signs before Jesus' return, and after these, his return can then become imminent, and then it can happen at any time. You're probably asking, how can that be? I've never considered that before, you might be saying. The answer is that once all the signs that have been foretold are fulfilled, then after that, Jesus' return becomes imminent from that moment on, because at that point, all the signs are fulfilled. There aren't any more that need to take place. In other words, Jesus' return isn't imminent now because the signs aren't fulfilled yet. But after they are, then it becomes imminent. For instance, in Matthew 24, Jesus gave us several signs: deception by false Christs and Messiahs, wars and rumors of wars, famine in diverse places, earthquakes, the abomination of desolation, the great tribulation, and the great falling away. But when those signs are all done, the sixth seal and the return of Jesus then becomes imminent and can happen at any time after the signs are fulfilled. So in that way, Jesus' return isn't imminent now, but will be imminent later after all the signs. And this is exactly what Jesus said in the fig tree parable. So also, when you see all these things, and he meant all the signs, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Once all the signs are seen, then his return becomes imminent. He is near, and it could come at any time. Now let's look at Luke 21, where this controversial verse is found, and see whether this fits with a metaphorical idea that the pre-tribulation rapture theorists believe, a theory of watching for an anytime return of Jesus, or whether it fits with a return after the signs. So let's look at it. And there will be signs in the sun and moon and stars, and on earth distress of nations and perplexity because of the roaring of the seas and the waves, people fainting with fear, with foreboding of what is coming on the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now, when these things begin to take place, here's the verse, straighten up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Here Jesus gives the signs on the very day of his return. The signs in the sun, moon, and stars, the darkening of them, distress among nations because of tsunami waves, people fainting with fear, and the powers of the heavens being shaken. What comes next? Jesus. Jesus comes on the clouds in power and great glory, and every eye will see him. So obviously these are not pre-tribulational events at all. Yet Jesus says when these things, these signs on the day of Jesus' return begin, only then are we to look up and watch for his return. Only then is his return imminent. Look at his exact words. Straighten up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Not only is this not pre-tribulational, it's not very metaphorical either, is it? It is a literal command to not hide in the caves and look away from Jesus, as we see the unrighteous doing in Revelation 6, verses 15 and 16, but to look up and look for him. But Jesus says to do this only when we see the signs on the day of his coming. The darkening of the sun, moon, and stars, and tsunami waves being the first. How many times have you heard this verse, then, used mistakenly? Online almost every day, I do. The COVID pandemic begins and someone says, "Lift up your heads because your redemption draws nigh." That isn't Jesus' command. He doesn't want us to look for him until all the signs are fulfilled. Only then are we to look for Jesus. Until then, we are to look for the signs of his coming. We are to anticipate Jesus with great expectancy. He is our blessed hope. But we aren't to look for him. Some say, "Well, I'm looking for Jesus, not the Antichrist." Some say, "I'm looking for the upper taker, not the undertaker." But guess what? That is not what Jesus instructs us to do. It is the opposite, actually, of Jesus' instructions. He wants us to watch for the Antichrist at the abomination of desolation first. We can have great anticipation of Jesus' coming no matter what rapture theory we believe. But we are not to watch for or look for Jesus first. Now others say, "But Jesus said that no one knows the day or hour. Doesn't that mean it's imminent now? Doesn't that mean it could happen at any time?" Again, that is not what Jesus said. He said, "Of that day and hour no one knows." It's a subtle and distinct difference. Jesus was speaking of a specific day. That day. Grammatically, it had to be the last day Jesus spoke of in Matthew 24. What was that day? It's the same day spoken of in Luke 21's passage we just read. Let's look at the Matthew version. "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven will be shaken. And there will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man. And then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory." It's almost the same wording as we saw in Luke. That is the day and hour no one knows. If you had been quoting this verse saying it has to do with a pre-tribulation rapture, that is absolutely 100% mistaken. It is grammatically mistaken. The imminent day is that day, the day when the sun, moon, and stars darken. The imminent day is after all the signs are fulfilled. It isn't imminent now. But I know what some of you are thinking. You're saying, "Nelson, you are so inconsistent." That one passage in Matthew 24:29, it said, "After the tribulation of those days." That, of course, is the Great Tribulation, which everyone knows is 1,260 days long. So, if that's true, then we would know the day and hour. It's not imminent. To which we say, you are missing an important passage. The Great Tribulation is not 1,260 days long. Can't be. It is not 3.5 years long. It is sometimes shorter than that. Jesus said so himself. And if those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Jesus shortens the 1,260 days for the sake of the elect, and only them. In other words, he returns and raptures the elect at an unknown day and hour. The unsaved, of course, must endure all 1,260 days, but the elect are saved sooner than that. The length of time Jesus shortens the Great Tribulation is the time that the elect spend in heaven while the wrath of God is poured out on the wicked on the earth. So after all the signs of Jesus' coming, it becomes imminent, and he returns at a day and hour no man knows. Only this theory, known as the pre-wrath theory, can explain all the nuances of all these verses. And as we spoke of in this previous video, it is dangerous and mistaken to say that Jesus could come at any time, like right now or today. He can't. The Antichrist must come first. The Great Tribulation must come first. The great falling away of a great deal of the church must happen first, by teaching that Jesus comes first. The students and listeners of those teachers are not being prepared for the very challenging times we are about to face as a church. We spoke of this, as we said in the previous video, and there is a link to that video down in the description. However, as we stated multiple times in this video, that doesn't mean we aren't to anticipate Jesus, to look forward to his coming, to wait for his coming, because he is our blessed hope. Blessed hope, you might say, but what about looking for our blessed hope? Aren't we to look for Jesus, not signs, as you are saying? One of the online comments said, "This moron," speaking of me, "is trampling on our blessed hope." Are we? Click right here to see if the blessed hope is a pre-tribulation rapture or something else. Is it the return of Jesus, but later, after the Great Tribulation? What does the passage say? Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.